So I guess by the end of 2013, I get forcibly separated from my doctor and her responsibilities. Anyway, so that's in 2013. But in 2014, I worked with some doctors around in Maryland. First, I went to a Dr. Rao, Dr. Arur Rao. His first name is spelled Aroor. The last name is spelled Rao, Rao. And he's in Lanham, and he's a cardiologist. Now, what he did is, well, I only went for him for one visit, but when I tried to get the records from him, he's giving me records without including the physical exam. Now, the physical exam for a cardiologist is mainly what he does with the stethoscope. So, but he doesn't include anything. He doesn't include my blood pressure reading. He doesn't include my weight. There's no part of the physical exam. And so that really tipped me off that all these things show up right on a basic kind of physical. Because this, so it comes to the basic heart, lung sounds, and the blood pressure and whatnot, all the simple stuff, that's where everything comes up. Anyway, so I had a blood test done, and it was found that the LDH, now the LDH is not the cholesterol LDL. The LDH is an enzyme that's released only when, like, your heart or your lungs or something is injured. So that was elevated, and so which means it's actually a biomarker of active cell death. So what it meant is that even as late as that time, some part of my body, and it's usually like a vital organ like the heart or the lungs, or even the blood vessels, is actively suffering injuries. So I had that biomarker, but then anyway, I went and I found a vascular specialist, and that doctor was Dr. Jeffrey Dormu, Dormu, and he's in Laurel. And from him on, I know that they all call capital imaging, and they all call Inova, and they all look for a deal. Okay, but I think with Dr. Dormu, whatever he may have agreed to, he broke very easily on a lot of things, right? So, he tried to conceal everything from me, but then when I asked the questions, he started giving things up very quick. So, Dr. Dormu is the one who did that test showing all the problems with the artery in the left arm, right? And so Dr. Dormu, I guess I wasn't there long enough to get all the information out of him, but one piece of information he still has to give me is his technician who does the Doppler sonogram test of the upper extremities, that's basically my arms up to my shoulder. The technician, his name is Alex W. Okay, and I recall very well when he did the test. Now, Dr. Dormu, I think he gave me a good copy of the artery test, but still on the artery test, he didn't really give an actual good interpretation for everything. He just kind of, on some of the things, he just kind of said low flow from point A to point B, whatever, but he didn't give a interpretation for it. Okay, but then anyone can figure out what's going on. But then for the vein test, of course the veins in the arms were okay, but there was the problem with the veins in the neck, because because when the landslide came down, obviously it injured the large veins that feed back into the heart, that drain blood from the head into the heart, right? So Now Alex W., the technician, he did find all those problems, and he actually put those notes all, because they have two separate worksheets. One is the artery worksheet and the other one is the vein worksheet. On the vein worksheet, the technician actually put the notes all over the sheet, because it's in addition to what was already in addition to the pre-printed form, because this is kind of how that test runs. They usually do the veins from the fingers all the way to like the shoulder area, and if there is a problem, then they kind of go a little further, right? So he did go a little further into the neck area and all, and he found all those problems. And the sheet that Dr. Dormu gave me, it's very obvious he used like a Photoshop thing, and he used the eraser. Because when you use the eraser using like Photoshop, you just get like millions of spots all over the page. So that's the only page that he gave me which has all these millions of spots all over it. And then also everything is basically erased out. So this is a pre-printed form that Dr. Dormu himself did, and he has like a simple checklist of things, yes, no for a lot of things, and none of that is filled out. They've all been whited out, but really those things are the minor things. The major things are what the technician found, and he wrote I saw him writing a whole bunch of notes on that sheet for all the additional things he found. So that's the things I still need from Dr. Dormu. Okay, and Dr. Dormu hasn't been sued yet for anything, but I still have time to do that. Okay, so anyway, and after I moved on from Dr. Dormu, I actually, what Inova or Dr. Cochran did is he actually, I think with Dr. Rao and Dr. Dormu both, they called Inova, and they got, and they got into some kind of a little conspiracy. But even before that, Dr. Cochran apparently called around in my area and tried to guess at where I may go for medical treatment. And a couple of places I called, they never even established a doctor-patient relationship. They kind of just didn't give me, didn't give me service, ignored my call, kind of thing. So, and okay, which is fine. And anyway, so, but the problem really came that, then after all that, I moved into the government, healthcare thing, the Medicaid, the free government assistance healthcare. Right, now that has a whole bunch of rules and laws. So basically, everything you see on the AMA Code of Ethics and all other kind of things people learn off in medical school and all, which is kind of the rules that doctors are to follow. Well, when you are a Medicaid patient, those things are basically codified. So they're really law, and these doctors have to basically obey the law. And if they don't obey the law, and if I get hurt, because they don't obey the law, that's actually a civil rights violation, because they're actually, being a state contractor. So the Medicaid plan that's big around here, there aren't many, there's only a few, and the one that's big around here is the one run by MedStar. So now I'm getting into the other giant healthcare entity, right? So I had a few different doctors with them, obviously, because those doctors were all doing some awful things, so I had to move from one to the other. But the common trend for these doctors with this MedStar contractor for this Medicaid plan was that they, a lot more eagerly than the other doctors, they jumped and leaped for the chance to get into a conspiracy and get some kind of a payment, unjust enrichment at my expense. So not only did they not give me the results of my physical exam and stuff, but they would write in all kinds of lies, trying to present as though I'm really at a high risk of, naturally occurring heart disease, I have really bad eating habits and diet and this and that, even though my CT showed from a calcification score, I literally have the lowest calcification score possible, meaning I really have the lowest risk of, what you would think of as coronary heart disease, right? So I had no chance of that kind of heart disease, but they put stuff in the record making it appear that I should have a high risk for that, whatever. But really, where the problem was if you recall with Dr. Kulkarni, she never stood up her migraine diagnosis, right? She basically had this off-the-books migraine diagnosis, and by the time she gave me the records, it was too late, and she had not done anything to go ahead and falsify that part of the records. So she really doesn't have it anywhere in the records that I had migraines, and she gave me medication for migraines, and one of them was, as I said before, was verapamil, which ended up acting on my injuries and actually giving me a life-ending condition, right? The heart condition, right? So so they actually went so far as to try to stand, and the first doctor I saw was a primary care. Her name is Dr. Anjana Dar, DHAR, and she's in Silver Spring, and she's actually a MedStar, I guess she's a MedStar employee. So, okay, and one of the things that she did is she put a diagnosis for migraines within my medical records, and then when I went to get my medical records from her, it did not show a diagnosis of migraines. Okay, so of course until that point I thought that maybe she didn't have a diagnosis of migraines, but then a few days later I had to go to another MedStar, like an urgent care place, because I had a sore throat or something, and then they actually gave me those records as well a second time, and at that time it seems Dr. Dar actually went back into the records and she added in migraine. So I'm trying to figure out, with Dr. Dar, when I got my records I didn't have migraines, then how the heck did you give me a diagnosis? You mean I went and saw Dr. Dar, and then I saw her a few days later and got my records, okay, and on my records she had no diagnosis for migraines, and then a couple of days later she went in and added migraines. Did like a tooth fairy or someone come and leave some secret message for her that I have migraines or something? I don't get it. So you know what she's up to, right? So she's very, we can tell right away what is the Achilles heel for Inova. For Inova and Dr. Kulkarni, it's really that she prescribed the verapamil, and she was never able to stand up that the migraine diagnosis. So without that, it's just as I claim, that it's all part of a hijacking. She only said I had migraines and gave me medication for it as part of a hijacking. So she never stood it up as any part of any normal kind of medical practice. Now, even if something went wrong, as long as, and she was falsifying the stuff anyway, if she had went and made this false presentation of a migraine but done a good extensive presentation, then at least it could be judged on kind of like a malpractice standard. But here it cannot be. It's clearly an accessory after the fact offense, and it has nothing to do with the State Board of Physicians or malpractice. It has to do with the police and going to jail, right? So anyway, so Dr. Dar is so eager to insert this diagnosis of migraines. At the same time, she doesn't want me to see that she's sticking it in. Okay, and anyway, and so then from I complained to this place, and I just agreed to just go to another doctor, and kind of like the same things continue again. And then anyway, they sent me to a cardiologist as well. The other doctor they send, the other primary care is Dr. Anthony McCarthy, MacArthy, and he's still my primary care with this plan. Okay, so I didn't change him after that. So, but anyway, the first cardiologist, so I got sent to a cardiologist, and that cardiologist's name was Dr. Luke Oke. L-U-C, and the last name is O-K-E. Well, oh yeah, he's up to his head in a conspiracy with Dr. Cochran. Well, so what he's doing is, actually on my first visit, I don't think he knew much of it. Now all these doctors, they've been, but he obviously they know what's going on, and so he kind of just went ahead and called Cochran or whatever. Even though I hadn't given them all the information, they kind of just, I guess they went through that. They went through Capital Imaging and got Dr. Cochran. And anyway, so of course they get into a conspiracy because they know they can. Inova has billions of dollars they get from the Fairfax County government and other ways, and so there's a lot of money to be made off of Inova. So, well, Dr. Oke does the same kind of thing. He kind of plasters migraines and headaches and stuff all over my medical records, even though I had never said I had any of those things. And he conducted an exercise EKG. So you do the treadmill EKG, and it also came with an echocardiogram. So you do the EKG plus you do an echo before and after, right? So what he did is he input into this is like an automated test which basically runs by itself, but he input into it that I was taking a beta blocker, because with the exercise EKG test, one of the medications a patient can be on which would throw the test off is being on a beta blocker, because if you're on a beta blocker, your heart rate doesn't come up much, right? So you can exercise all you want, your heart rate kind of stays low. And if you're on a beta blocker, that's actually okay. It's not really harmful if it's being caused by a beta blocker, but it throws off the interpretation of a test. And actually what is said is all patients have to be off the beta blocker. But anyway, the machine still has this function where if you type in the patient is on a beta blocker, that lets you lower the target heart rate by a lot. And he hit the nail on exactly one of the big components of my heart condition, right? So, and this really goes to a doctor, especially a specialist, who before even, having actually conducted an objective medical test. And that's what they teach in medical school. Just by the history alone, the doctor can tell exactly what's going on. So he knew exactly what one of the big components of my heart problem was, and that is when I exercise, although at rest my heart rate is kind of high meaning higher than normal, a little bit higher than normal. Okay, not a big deal. So even though it's a little bit higher than normal at rest, when I exercise, the heart rate hardly goes up much, and that's a really bad thing, right? And that's one of the bad things the heart can do, and that's one of the things that verapamil did, because verapamil actually works on the heart muscle cells, but it also works on the cells that they have. I guess it's called like the sinoatrial node, right? So they have the sinoatrial node, which is said to be like the pacemaker of the heart, right? So, and that's like a control device basically on the heart, right? So since the verapamil went and injured obviously that control device on the heart, it keeps, when I exercise it, and that's why my heart strains a lot, because the heart rate doesn't come up. I mean, it comes up a little bit, but it doesn't come up as it's supposed to, right? So, and that's what Dr. OK figured out. I guess maybe even Dr. Cochran, they all had it figured out beforehand. I mean, without, actually doing any kind of a physical exam, even just by knowing about what my symptoms were and how and what medication, which was verapamil, and they kind of figured out exactly what's going on, that my heart rate wouldn't come up. So my target heart rate was supposed to be like 186, and by writing in that I was on a beta blocker, he was able to lower the target heart rate to 150. And then we got up to 150, and then he tried to stop it. I didn't let him stop it, so I kept going, and that's the time all kinds of really awful things showed up on the EKG, right? So, and then he didn't release any of the stuff, but then he released only parts of the stuff. But he did release significant parts that showed some really bad problems on the EKG. At the same time, he didn't release the EKG portions from the peak. So when you're talking about an exercise EKG, you really want the peak, right? You want to see how it looked at the peak, and that's where it's going to be at its worst. So right, so those pages he did not give me, but he gave me the rest. At the same time, on his interpretation, he wrote that there was nothing wrong with the test, even though it was literally off the charts. And they used this thing called ST elevations and ST depressions, and that's one little portion of the EKG. It's called the ST segment, and if it is, if it's larger than -2 or larger than +2, it's supposed to be something bad, right? And mine was like at -10 and +10, so that's got to be really bad. And in fact, when I spoke to Dr. McCarthy, and some of it is even recorded on a phone call, that he did confirm that my numbers are really bad. So, and But then when I went to discuss the issue with Dr. OK, what he said is he doesn't want to see me anymore, even though he had no right to do that, because this is entirely controlled by the Medicaid law. And they only have a few specific reasons why a doctor can stop seeing a patient. And he didn't have any of those reasons. The only reason he wanted to stop seeing me is because he didn't want to answer my questions. So anyway, now Dr. OK is one of the doctors I'm suing. And so I want to get my full results, and I want to know why he lied on my test results, because I later... And then he also did just a regular echo by itself like a month later, and he lied all throughout those results too, because I had the same test done a few months later, and it's very obvious how he was lying, because there's some parts of the echo test where you give measurements, okay, and that's, you are looking at the structure of the heart. But in other parts of the echo results, you're actually giving the functioning itself of the heart. So you're showing, and that's, because you have two portions. One is the sonogram, which is like which does like a structural, and the other one is the Doppler, which by the Doppler waves you get the actual functioning of the heart. So for the functioning of the heart, so even in those sections, he added the modifier, this part, whatever, is structurally normal. But it was structurally normal, but it was dysfunctional. So, and that part he didn't have, and that's the kind of lies he told all throughout. Anyway, so then after that, but still, I was trying, just as with Dr. Dormu, with these doctors, when I complained through them and when I just kept on contacting them, eventually they started giving me stuff, just like, so that stress EKG thing, initially he didn't give me anything, but at least he gave me a lot of the papers which showed a lot of the bad things, even though he didn't give me all the papers and he did not give me an interpretation, all which you're supposed to do. But then I went and complained, used the complaint process, right? And I complained. But then what happened is, it looks like the individual who runs this MedStar unit is called MedStar Family Choice. Okay, well, she's this really fat bitch. I guess she just eats all the time or whatever. And I actually wrote in the court filing, she's as large as a Baltimore Raven, and she probably swallowed a couple of nurses in her lifetime. So anyway, she's the one who runs this thing, and I she's also a nurse. Anyway, so I guess, but I think she kind of advanced in MedStar because she was good at concealing wrongdoing and that kind of stuff. So she advanced to the top of this department. Well, I guess she still has further aspirations, because this is still like the welfare division of MedStar anyway. So I guess she wants to be in some other division. But so, and I think at this point for her, she's trying to protect her turf, since she picked all these piss-ass doctors so she can make a buck. And so essentially once she gets into the picture, okay, her name is Carol Attia, A-T-T-I-A, Carol Attia. Yeah, okay, so we got some images off of her. Yeah, she's the one looking like the whale. Yeah, okay, a big white whale. Okay, that's her. Okay, and so and then so what she does is she completely shuts everything down for me, and I get nothing after that. No information, no further information, no treatment, nothing. And she puts her subordinates to. She first sends one out who's actually only using a middle name. I mean, you're supposed to identify yourself when you're part of a government program, and instead of identifying herself, she only gives me her middle name. And okay, so, and then as I talk to her, this person named Renee, she finally admits that piece by piece, every part of my complaint, none of it she can actually do anything about. So really, this Atia just sent this person out to be, to kind of divert my attention and try to make it look like something is going to happen. But this person was completely powerless, and she's actually admitting it on tape. And then I spoke to, I guess, like her supervisor, who's a head of the that department, and she kind of gives somewhat of a different story. And then I end up speaking to Atia herself, and Atia actually pretends to be just another employee there. When I ask about my who she's who all have received my information, I'm just trying to get some basic privacy information from her. And well, she says that she's she acts like she's just another employee, and she doesn't know who has the information and so forth. So, and then Atia's assistant is put on the phone one time, and Atia's assistant actually now all these are recorded, and you can hear them. I have the links, and some of them are actually on the same channel. And so in one, Atia's assistant actually says, when I ask her if she's ever heard about the enrollee handbook. Now, the enrollee handbook is literally how how everything works. The enrollee handbook is a compilation of all these Medicaid laws and the state laws that this contractor is supposed to follow, and all the rights that the enrollee has and so forth. So if you don't have so she actually says she's never heard of such a thing. So if you never heard of such a thing, obviously you're not going to be following any of the laws. And that's what I said. They literally violate every single law, every single rule. Yeah, well, if you say you don't have an enrollee handbook, so I guess that's what you do. You have no intention of following any of the laws. So obviously, they know what the enrollee handbook is. Who wouldn't know it? I mean, that's the only book they follow. And in fact, the enrollee handbook, they have to actually take it to Health and Human Services at the federal level and have them approve the handbook, make sure it's saying all the right things, and only then is that enrollee handbook even enforced. So with all these things, I was able to record all this, and obviously I made the points how I'm able to record. And the easiest excuse, well, it's not an excuse, the easiest right I have to record is because they are public employees. They're contractors for the state, and they basically have no right to privacy when they are out working with the public. So this is not on their private time, and this is not some private matter, right? Okay, so anyway, so I had every right to record, and this Atia, they looked into every which way to see if they can stop me from recording, and so they knew very well that what I was doing is entirely lawful. And so, and then I sent my complaint